Yeah, nailed it, man. First try. Is this like you're just unpacking everything?
No. So we moved. We moved in like October, but I don't have like. So basically, my old apartment, I had like a studio with like all this equipment from when I was streaming. But when we moved, I packed it all up, and now it's still packed because I don't really have a studio right now. It's kind of crazy. So yeah, it's been months since I've even looked at that stuff. So it's like, I don't know where it is. I lost the camera. And,
I mean, I think that's true for so many people too, man, because it's like, of course, everyone was streaming over the pandemic, but then I feel like DJs abandoned that as fast as they could, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I really loved it, but it was unsustainable once I was traveling again and, you know, life.
No, of course. I loved it too. I don't know how deep you went getting into like the Twitch ecosystem, but I knew what Twitch was and I would watch it every once in a while. But once I really started doing it a lot, it was amazing to me how much of like a whole world it was with its own like characters. And just from a DJ perspective, there were DJs who were huge on Twitch who I didn't know from like the touring circuit. And it was kind of cool to like get a glimpse of a whole nother world that I didn't really know existed, you know?
Yeah. It was the same for me. Like, I was like, I didn't know anything about it. I'm not a gamer. I don't game. So I was like, let me try this out. And at the time, they were really trying to make it more of a music platform as well, and not just sort of like gaming and talking and stuff like that. So it was exciting. And there was already DJs there who have like paved the way kind of for the Twitch DJing thing. And I wasn't aware of them because I wasn't on Twitch. So when I started, these like huge DJs and in the context of Twitch, you know, were like, you know, you start learning about them and it's like pretty insane. And they're cool. They got their own thing going on and it's such a unique thing because you got this really tight community. And I really miss that. I just don't have the time and I don't have like the studio set up right now. I was talking about it last night. I would love to do it again sometime, like maybe once a month or something, you know?
Yeah. I mean, how heavy were you on it? Because, you know, some people were going where they were doing, it was like a full-time job, you know?
It was like a full-time job. Like I was doing Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I would DJ for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending. It was a pretty intense schedule, and it was basically aside from making music, it was like my job.
Yeah, no,
I was like
exactly.
making money off of it. You know, it was cool, and it was like I built like a really nice community that, you know, it got me into Discord because Discord goes hand in hand with Twitch. When you're offline on Twitch, everyone's on Discord. So I started a Discord and learned about that, and that community is still tight. Like whatever, 2 years later, maybe, or whenever that was, like everyone's still there, and people traveled to parties together that all met through my Twitch channel and probably other Twitch channels as well. But they kind of gather there and make plans, and it's really cool. So I don't want to lose that, you know, so maybe one day they're still there. So I know if we go streaming, they'll be there to support.
Yeah. Okay. So I had, you just set up a couple things in my head, but before I even get there, man, it's great to see you.
Yeah. Likewise. We just started going right into it.
Oh, I love it. That's the best. But dude, you look great, man. It's been a while.
Thanks, man. So do you, man. Dude. So I was like looking up the last time we did this, and it was almost exactly 6 years ago.
It's fucking
and that's crazy.
Yeah.
It was like July 25th, 2017 or something. And you had come to my apartment in downtown and we just recorded it I think it was just audio, right?
Yeah, it was just audio back then. I didn't switch to video till the pandemic, and then everything had to be on Zoom, and then we just kind of kept it there.
Yeah, that's cool. It works. Yeah, it's funny because since then, I've lived in like maybe 3 or 4 different places. I now have 2 children. Like so much has happened since our last conversation on here.
Man,
so, yeah, a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, dude, so much. And so, I mean, maybe part of the through line, one of the things you just made me think about when you were talking about being on Twitch and then getting off of Twitch and wanting to go back to it, like you were talking about community and this idea of community. And if I think about your career as a whole, I feel like community and that idea of looking for community, finding a community, building a community has been a major part of it kind of the whole way through, maybe more than some people's. And, you know, you also mentioned that you aren't a gamer, right? And that it's not so much of like you are a nerd for music, but you're not like the gamer nerd. You're not necessarily like the tech nerd. So I wanted to ask you, like, what is it? Is it the community aspect? Like what part of this is what you nerd out about?
That's a good question that I'm not sure I know how to answer, but I don't know. I think like when I was younger, I don't know. I always kind of felt, I don't know, maybe a little bit, not really an outcast, but I really wasn't sure where I belonged because I kind of straddled a few different sort of social circles when I was a kid. And I wasn't really sure where I was supposed to be. And like when I discovered like raves and dance music, it was still very underground. You know, you were there.
Oh yeah.
You know, I think. And it was like, and it was just like an instant feeling of like, I felt welcome and everyone seemed like welcome. And I'd never seen anything like that before. So it was like really inspiring. And I just really leaned into it. And I already had been doing music and I was into dance music, but it wasn't until I saw a rave and was in one, you know, and like it was like 98 or something. And I was like, oh, all of this music and the design and everything around it in these magazines and the videos, like it all makes sense now, you know? And
yeah,
you know, you just become part of like a rave crew and then like you're in music and then you kind of get drawn into like a crew of DJs or promoters or, you know, whatever. And it's just cool, like being a part of something, even no matter how small or big or whatever. And that was the aspect I always loved about it. And I just loved making like really close friends who shared like a similar interest, you know, like musically. I've always been into like UK music, you know, like the happy hardcore thing.
Yeah.
And
all
like,
the way back.
All the old school stuff. And like, you know, you like UKG and all of that stuff too, around that same era. And like, it was like, not many people were into that. So when I saw people like that, we just really connected.
Well, that's part of it too, right? Not to cut you off, but like back when we started discovering all this music and all that, it felt like you found a secret, you know, like it felt like all of a sudden you had found a hidden thing that no one else knew about. And I don't know if that feeling exists for kids in the same way today. I think there's lots of other cool shit for them that we didn't have. But for us, at least for me, like walking into that first rave, hearing those first few records that nobody else had because it was on vinyl and there were only a few copies, that kind of thing. That for me was what I nerded out about. Was it ticks off the same thing in my brain as like being a collector or wanting to, you know, dive so deeply into an interest where you're like, all of a sudden it's a door opens, it's a whole new world. You get to go in and explore. And because there aren't a lot of people there doing it, you end up having a lot of control and you end up having a lot of, I guess, just say in sort of like the direction that it's going. So that participation aspect too was huge for me.
Yeah, you definitely nailed it. I think it was like you felt like you discovered something that no one else knew about, and you're a part of this secret. And it's different nowadays because information is instant, and like there's not like a lot of regional stuff really anymore. But like there was like the Midwest rave scene, there was the East Coast, like Northeast rave scene.
Yeah.
There was, you know, all these different regions, and they're all very different. And I grew up in West Virginia, but I lived like an hour south of Pittsburgh, so that was like the rave scene that we went to, and sometimes like Ohio, and we would drive to like DC just to hear like some UK drum and bass DJ just drop dub plates that like no one's ever heard because only that person has them, you know, and that was the most exciting thing ever. And like you were one of the people in the crowd that night that heard it, and you probably wouldn't hear that record either ever again, or like until a year or more later when they actually produced the record.
Right. There's only one opportunity. It's a scarcity thing, you know? That made it so exciting. Like you just made me remember when you were talking about driving hours to go see someone play a single song. For me, I remember, I think I was in college and I drove, it must have been at least 4 or 5 hours because MC Skibbity was playing some party out in New Hampshire that I just randomly saw a flyer for. And I had been listening to his tapes for so long that he was like, to me, it was like a superhero is coming to town kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like not even a real person. It's like an icon. I don't know. I was obsessed. And so I just drove like 5 hours with a couple friends. And what it ended up being was Skibbity in somebody's basement playing for like 20 people, maybe. It was like, it was nothing. But for me, it was like the best event possible, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, I think some of that is missing now, just that scarcity. Because then when you find it, it meant so much.
And to give like perspective now, Skibbity was like a god of like, you know what I mean? Like drum and bass MC, like party MC, like he plays massive, gigantic parties in the UK, but then comes to New Hampshire, America, and plays in a basement in whatever year that was. But
2001, probably. I don't even know.
Yeah. So the scarcity, you just knew something that no one else, you felt like no one else knew about, you know? And I always loved that. Even like you mentioned tapes, a lot of people are gonna be like, what's he talking about? Like,
yeah, true.
You know, Skibbity, because back then they used to release these tape packs that were like, they would record the whole event, and there was always MCs in the UK. And like, so we would obtain these tapes because there was people that would sell them at raves here.
Yeah.
So you would like I would always buy one every time I went to a party, and then just listen to it forever. And it was always like, you feel the atmosphere and everything. And
you hear
that's sort of my inspiration why we do. That was why we do like the night bass. We call them tape packs. It was just a recording on SoundCloud of our events. But that was very special to me. And I, you know, like you said, like going back to what you asked before, like that's what I nerd out on, is like that nostalgia for like those formative years when you're like we're reminiscing about these parties, but they were probably so horrible, but like, the energy and the excitement was there, and that like formed us. And that's why it seems like it was this amazing thing. But when you look back at it, there was no production.
Yeah.
Sound system probably sucked. It was probably super dangerous. You know what I mean? Like there was some unsavory people there. So like, it's a lot different, and we're reminiscing about it like it was this beautiful thing, but it kind of was, because it made us, you know, love that music, and we're still here. Like, you're doing this all the time. I'm doing this, you know, it's
I mean, just that you're still here. I wrote this down to talk about, because I feel like from the era we come from, unless you were already a famous DJ, like there's some mega famous DJs from back then that are still around. But as far as like taking your career as an example, like someone, you've just been steady the whole way through. You've been a hard worker the whole way through. You've always just been pushing it along. There's not that many people left from that era that are still, I feel like, operating in like a a successful, a relevant, and like a progressive way. You know what I mean? I don't know if you feel that way, but I don't think there's that many of us left. It's weird.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't feel like I've been so steady. Like I've always been doing it, but I think, switching through genres and kind of ending up, the path that I did was a long, hard road where there's many points where I could have like jumped off, but I think I was like tenacious and just like, there's nothing else I wanted to do. Like, what's the alternative for me at this point? Now I'm like 20 years in the game. So it's like, I don't know what else I would do, but like,
how's the old resume looking?
Thousands of raves DJ'd.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but it's like, I would say there's not that many people. There also are a lot of people who are running the scene, all the biggest promoters who kind of run everything now across the country, but then also like local city promoters who have been around. There's not a ton of people, but the ones who stayed are shaping what things are, and
that's a great point.
And I think a lot of us who are still here, like, are fluid enough to like accept change and like adapt with the times. Cause a lot of times I think maybe the people who don't make it is because they're kind of old and cranky and think nothing is cool. Like, it used to be like this. And like, I think if you start acting like that, you kind of lose your audience.
With every paradigm shift, it's like a whole group of people are just shoved off the cliff. Like you remember when it went from like vinyl to CDs, some people didn't make that jump, and
they refused.
And they're just gone. And then, like Serato to record box, like there's a million times where just some people didn't make the switch. And I'm not even talking shit about them, but it's like, that's just the way this goes, is that each cycle, I think a few more people, don't keep up for whatever reason. And it's all about the fluidity, man, when you do it long enough.
Yeah. And I think like evolving and changing from an artist perspective, I don't know about like promoters and everything else, but like as an artist, like I change slowly and I do what feels right. Like I'm not like, this is the newest trend, let me do this real quick. It's like, it's like, just do me. There's like some people who like it. Hopefully more people like it. Trends come and go. It'll come back, all that kind of stuff. But I think if you stay true to yourself, it's like the best way to go. You know what I mean? As far as creative goes, I think you're not going to see me doing like a TikTok dance or writing some track that's like super out of, out of character for me. So just staying true to myself, but also moving forward at the same time.
Well, how are you really dealing with, the fact that everything is a little more commodified, that content is king, that, in some ways, like the fact that you even need to be aware of TikTok, that kind of thing. Like, how are you dealing with those shifts?
I think it's hard on people because I think it's like, I'm cool with it. Like, I'm not super heavy on social media, but enough, it's just kind of boring me because like at the moment, because everything's very like similar, like everything someone does is almost like a copy of something else.
Yep.
And there 100%. Are some original things like, and TikTok's cool with like, you could learn a lot of stuff and there's a lot of funny stuff and that kind of thing. But I think there's people who have to like, or they think they have to like do gags and like, or like content, like, just create random stuff to create it. And I'm like, that must be so fucking exhausting. Like, and I think you see, like you said, like, oh, we've been around for 20 years and you don't see a lot of people like our age who have been around for that long who are still doing it. Dude, there's a lot of people from 5 years ago that are long gone. Like I saw this flyer, a t-shirt actually, for a festival that I played, like, I think like a year before the pandemic. And like, I took the shirt off and I had it on my, like, sitting there, and I was just looking at the lineup, and I was like, literally maybe 4 of these DJs are still active. Cause there was a lot of names where I was like, oh my God, I remember that person. Like, whatever happened to, you know, and it was like, I think people just burn out because a lot of the stuff that comes along with it is distracting. It's like the shiny promise of like engagement if you do funny videos, and you kind of just get like burned out, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's a balance, right?
Yeah. Or you lose direction or lose focus. And yeah, all of that, man, is, I get it though. It's hard. It's hard to not lose direction or lose focus from time to time with all this stuff. I mean, so all of this, like everything we've talked about so far, I think actually pertains to your new album and to everything you've got going on, right? Because the new album is called Together, and it's like, I mean, you correct me if I'm saying anything wrong here, but to me, it seems like this, what you're putting out there, it's like a culmination of something you've been building for a while, which, you know, is the night-based community. You're working with a lot of people that you've built relationships with through that community. And I mean, I think that's maybe another way to stay focused and to not lose direction, right? Is to try to be around people who are doing work that you find exciting, and maybe you work with them, and you kind of like find the path together a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really enjoy working with others. Like, if the only way to do music was to just like be alone in a room forever and like make music that I then just put out and see what happens, like, I would be so bored. It's just more fun to like collaborate for me. And because there's like certain things that pop up when you're being creative and you're writing music that like someone else might notice, or someone else is doing something that they don't notice is a spark, but you notice it, and kind of, it could go either way. And you need that extra set of ears or multiple different people there. And I love that. But the whole concept for the album, you definitely nailed it. I really had this like feeling that I wanted to do another album for a while, a year or so ago, and a yearning to do a third album. And I just, this concept was like in my head since I started thinking about it. Like, it all was just like very like organic thoughts. Like, I was just like really thinking about like camaraderie and community and like all these things that I cherish. And, you know, the first album I did, Outsiders, was sort of like a similar theme of like not fitting into a box and like celebrating that, you know, because I was doing night bass, and it was like EDM was like the biggest thing ever, just like go play in a stadium. But here I am playing like this deeper kind of like bassy UK house stuff. And
is it weird, by the way, to think about when you doing night bass was like an odd, out of the ordinary thing? Because I feel like at this point, it's shifted so much that now night bass fits in perfectly with what's going on.
Yeah, is no longer outsider.
Yeah.
For the most part. But
you're the jock now. You got to beat up the nerds at this point.
Exactly. But without the bullying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting. And then the second album was called High 8. And that was like more of like me, again, like looking back at like my influences and celebrating the influences. And I actually, at the same time I was kind of working on that one, I had found like this box full of High 8 cassette tapes that, you know, for a video camera, that I grew up from like the age of 14 until my mid 20s, like with the High 8 camera, just filming everything. So I just started watching all these tapes, and it was like all these old raves and like just like skating with friends and just like parties and goofing off. And it was like really cool. And it was really inspiring. And it just gave me this like nostalgic feeling. And that was sort of the vibe for that High 8, that album. And then that was several years ago. And then fast forward to now, I've just been thinking about this community thing and just the love you get in the music scene when you have like a nice group of people around you. And I've always been lucky, to have supportive peers and friends and stuff like that. So that was just like a loose concept, and it's very broad, but like the more I went forward with the album, the more it made sense, because I ended up doing a ton of collaborations. It wasn't like meant to be like that, but that's just what happened. It was also like a really unique situation, because I started it last summer. I was like, I'm going to do this album. So I started writing all these demos, and I was just stacking demos, just like basic ideas. And then, I had just had a kid, and then we moved. And then I was also touring at the same time. And then like we moved into this house, and there was like a lot of work. So we were like, it was like a lot of like real life stuff happened. And then time's ticking, time's passing. And we had our second baby on the way at that time. And then, so then there was like, 23's coming up, and they're like, the conversations about the album are really starting to like, how's the album going? And I'm like, I haven't done anything. I don't even have a studio. So I'm like working in headphones and, whatever, and just trying to be a dad and all this stuff. And then we're having meetings with like, the agents, and they're like, well, yeah, we got your album tour booked and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, like I don't even have a song. So like, the deadline, I'm like, that's cool. I can get it done. I can like push it out. And they're like, okay, well, we need the artwork next week. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, so I ended up having them like push the tour back. So it's this summer, but like we pushed the deadline for the album. And then I just really started like more developing ideas. Did Night Rider, the first single, first. That's pretty much the reason it was the first single was because it was the only song.
I love that.
But it's a really good song that I'm proud of. Screw Fizzer is like amazing on it. But yeah, so I was kind of like, I started sending out those demos I was working on to other people and being like, do you want to like jump on any of these? And it started to shake out a little bit. I was like picking songs, sending it to someone. Sometimes people send me something and I'd be like, oh, let me work on this. So like, as it went forward, it was like suddenly Together made a lot more sense, because it was in a like collaborative meaning. And then as the deadline was, we had our second kid, and that was like quite a distraction from making music.
Well,
I wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
So we were just, I was just being a dad and like settling into that and figuring out how life was going to be with two little babies. And then deadline's coming. And I was like, the album is due in like a week or something. So I didn't have a studio. I didn't have nothing. So I was like, just all these demos. During that time, I finished Until the Morning, the Jay Robinson collab. That's the first track on the album and the second single. So those two songs were done. And then my friend was like, you can use my studio downtown. So I was like, cool. Susie, my wife, was like, just do what you got to do. Like, I get it. Like, I'll handle everything here. So like, again, doing that together, she like gave me the space to be able to like focus. Cause it's hard, man, like to write and be creative with like some, like your kids screaming, and it's like very hard to be in the moment,
Oh, well, of course. And, your work, I would imagine, then you only have, maybe an hour or a 2-hour period where it's like, I have to be creative right now, and it's like that kind of thing, I think, could be really tough too.
And it's hard for me to work like that. I think some people can, but I adapted to where I would have like 30 minutes and I would sit and just like make myself do something. But I thought I was working and being productive, but it wasn't until I started going downtown to my friend's studio and working for like 14 hours every day for like a week, where I was like, wow, I haven't been doing anything, And then like, once I could sit and focus, I was just like pounding out music. Like it was like, I was really inspired because I had been like itching to do it for so long, and it was cool. And like, so I would be working on a collab, send it back to someone else, somewhere else, send them the project. They work on that. I open up another project, start working on that. They send that back. I close that project, send it to someone else, open it, so I was just like, it was like, and I was just like really focused, and it was cool. And, in a week, I don't want to say I did the whole album in a week, but like, it wasn't an album. There wasn't a form or like a track list until that week was over, and it was all due on a Friday. It's like pretty much like, distributor. It's like, this is like the last minute to get it in. And like, it was amazing because like, again, the Together thing, it's like everyone I worked with is like, most of the people on there are people I've worked with before who I have a lot of love for. And I think being a good person to other people, like in the industry, in the scene, is like, it goes a long way because I'm working in this like really different way on this album. Like telling someone who's, in dance music, the way you work on music is you make a track. You're like, this is great. I'm going to play it out. So you go out, play it out, come back, change it, play it out again the next week, change it, play it out, fine tune it, send it to other people. It's like months of a process. And then like, here I am being like, hey dude, like I have to turn this in 2 days. Like, are you happy with this? And it's like kind of an insane thing to ask, to put out dance music that you haven't heard in a club yet and put your name on it. And
yes and no. I don't know. There's something about it I kind of like, because I think there is the other side of that where you can keep tweaking and fine tuning a song to the point where you kind of ruin it, or you fall out of love with it, or it's less exciting by the end. So I think there is something to that, man, because it's never finished, right? Like there's always something you could tweak. So I kind of like the idea of like, no, this is the idea. I like the idea. Let's just run with it.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think there's also like, because it was such a short amount of time, it wasn't like you even had time to not listen to it and then get perspective later by clearing because when you listen to something over and over, it just sounds right.
Yeah.
But then if you take a day and you listen to other music and you come back to it, you're like, oh wow, this is all wrong, So
yeah.
Not even having that time. But that's what was good about, working on things together, was someone else could listen to it after I had worked on it, but I'm so grateful for everyone on there who like really just let me do that, and like signed off on everything. And it was really cool. Like, a lot of conversations, a lot of good vibes, good friendships and stuff. Like you couldn't just do that with like a stranger, you know what I mean? And and that's right. That's almost like the ethos of like the concept of the album is like that, what I just told you. Cause I couldn't have done it alone. Like I could have, but it wouldn't be what it is, I don't think.
Yeah, the heart wouldn't be there, and it's more about the intangible. Like the songs feel good, the collaborations feel good, not just because you're talented and you're working with talented people, but it's because you have a relationship with those people, and it's maybe this is getting a little woo woo, but it's like part of hearing that song is sort of hearing that relationship.
Sort of the ones in the last hour were like Shift Key. He had sent me a bunch of demos, and then that one had the vocal on it, the Kelly Lee vocal on it. And I really liked it. So I just like told him I want to work on it. So I was like sitting on it. And then I like long before the deadline, I had worked on it and sent it to him. I changed it like quite a bit and kind of toughened it up. And then I sent it to him. And he was like, cool. I don't know what else I could do. Like, I was like, he's like a musical genius. Like, he's like incredible. So I was like, can you just write any kind of like chords or riff over top of it? Like, just that I can like chop up and play with. And he was like, I'll try. And then like, fast forward to that like final week where I was just like really trucking, and like I'm like, yo, can you write something? He's like, let me try. He's like, I actually was about to do something. And then he was like, I think I did it. I don't know if I like it. And he sent me this, like, those like disco chops that are in the song and like the guitar. And I was like, dude, this is insane. Like, send me this. And then I just kept like arranging it, wrapping it up, and like sending him clips like all day. And then it was just like, I was like, yeah, so I have to turn this in 2 days. And he was, or I was like, I have to turn this in on Friday. And he was like, as in like 2 days from now. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay. Like, just like, okay, cool. So we just like went back and forth until that was done. And then the other one, so like, shout out to Shift Key for doing that.
That's one of my favorite songs on the album, by the way. I love that song.
Thanks, man. I love it too. Like, they're both so talented. It's such a cool, like, mix of everyone. It's very good.
It's so cool. Well, and that's the thing. It's a new thing from both of you. Like, I'd never heard you sound exactly like that, and I'd never heard Shift Key sound exactly like that. And that's what I think is cool. Like, maybe that's what is awesome about doing it on such a tight timeline, is like, maybe if you had more time, you guys would have refined it, and in the end, it maybe would have sounded a little closer to home. But I kind of like that it's out there.
Yeah. And I'm always trying to move forward in different directions. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I like that. I ended up really liking that one. Like, now
it works, man. It's a banger. Really, I love it.
And the other one was like the last track on the album, Screenshots, that was produced by me and Badger. And then the vocals were written and performed by Merkage Dave. That one was like, I had this demo that had the flute in it, but I just kind of like made this demo and like, I wasn't really sure what to do with it. It was kind of in like a banger range. Like, it was pretty heavy, but it had that like cool flute in it and stuff. And then I'd been texting with Badger a lot, like a couple weeks before the deadline. And I was like, dude, let me send you this thing and like, let me know what you think. I sent it to him, and then he sent me back literally like right after like some voice notes of like him, like what he had done. And I was like, holy shit. And I was like, I need to get Merkage Dave on this, because he made it like vibey. It was a bit like aggressive, and then he kind of stripped it back and made it more of a vibe. And then I sent it to Dave, who I'd worked with before on my last album. And I've known him for over 10 years, probably. I used to go play. He had a party called Merkage in the UK, and I would go play there. Just a great person and amazing like songwriter. So I just sent it to him, and he was like, I love this. Like, can you send me like a longer loop? So we sent him that and just like kind of left him. And then fast forward to like that final hour, and I was like, yo, man, like, I need something. He's like, because he takes a while to write. He's very thoughtful and deep, and like,
right.
He's very serious about his craft, and his music's amazing. So I knew it would be worth the wait. So then he started sending me voice notes of him like singing it. And I was like, he had like a few different sort of arrangements of the vocals. And I was like, holy shit, like, it was amazing. And then, so he had to go in the studio in London. He recorded, and I finally got the vocals literally like almost on the last day of like work on the album. And the song really wasn't written. It was just like a loop. So I had to like sit after like I finished every other song, and that was the last song. And I had to literally just sit and write, because the other ones were like kind of there. I just kind of had to mix and arrange and like make it sound good. But that one was like, I had to sit and like write a song, because we had like a couple chords and these things, and it just like flowed throughout the day. Like, it all came out. And then I was going back and forth with Dave in London. He was like at a dinner and like listening to shit on his headphones. Badger was like at a rave, like about to DJ, like listening to it. And it was like this again. It was like, man, you guys are amazing. Like, I can't believe you're just like doing this. So it was just so cool for them to step up and just like work like that. And Dave wanted to do some like background vocals that are in like the breakdown part and at the end of the song. And I was like, just record it in your phone and like send it to me. So those are like from his phone. And then I worked those in, but that was like very last minute, that song. And then we did some changes like later to upload like and replace the master. But yeah, all that stuff was like very last minute, and everyone just like stepped up and like worked with me, man. It's like, it was pretty amazing.
How did you feel in that week? Were you like just stressed out beyond belief, or were you kind of in the flow and enjoying the chaos of it?
I felt insane because I was like, on one hand, I was like enjoying, when I was in the moment, I was really enjoying it. But then like on the way there, I'd be like, oh God, I hope it. Cause you know how like making music, it's like, there's no promise. Like just because you're in a studio working doesn't mean anything's going to work or sound good or whatever. So like, there's like that anxiety of like, what's going to happen, you know? And then, but in the moment, it was like this beautiful, like I was really enjoying it, you know? And then when I would drive home at like 2 a.m, it was like listening to the music in the car, like kind of half excited, half unsure, because you've been listening to music for like 12, 14 hours. And it was just like, yeah, I felt insane, dude. And like, even when I was done, I was like, I don't know. Like listening to the album, I put it in like, I think what the order is now. I had ordered it and I was listening on the way home and I was like, I think it's good, but I was so deep into it that I couldn't look at it objectively.
Yeah.
And once I had like my wife was like, are you so excited? Like you finished it, you got it done. And I was like, I think so. Like, you know, like I was still just like, it was just such an intense like time where I was like, my body just felt like crazy, like, you know, like shaking, like just from all the pressure. Cause everyone's like, what's going on? Where's this? Where's that? We got to work on this. Can you join this call? And I'm like, I ain't doing shit. Like I have to finish this album. So
yeah.
It was crazy. It was crazy. Probably sounds stupid, but like, yeah, it was like stressful and fun and everything at the same time. But now with a buffer from that crazy hectic week, like I'm very proud of it. And I did like a private Google Meet, like listening party last night. There was like 60 people who like won like an invite.
Oh, cool.
And I just like played each song and talked about each song. And that was the first time I felt like, oh my God, I have an album coming out. Cause like everyone's reacting in like the chat. And it was like, it felt good. Cause I've been so busy with like, cause I had to rush that out. And then it was like, all right, let's rush all the assets and marketing and all the other stuff that comes along with putting out an album. So it's just a lot of like non-music crap, you know, that you have to deal with.
Of course.
Listening to it last night with all those people listening to it. It's the first time I've seen anyone react to it, really. That's not like in my inner circle. And like, I was like, oh, I have an album coming out. Like, this is cool. So like, I think all this time later, I'm like a month after doing the album, I'm like, cool. Like, this is great. I'm very excited now. Whereas before I was just like frazzled, you know?
Of course. Yeah. Just burnt out and overwhelmed. And I mean, I think another aspect of this that's fucking cool, man, is like, now, you know, this is an ability that you have, right? To like look back at it and be like, holy shit, like I made an album in a week. Like that's the kind of thing where I don't think, probably you don't think you can do it until you do it. Right. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, maybe I'm better at this than I thought, you know?
Yeah. Like I was talking to my wife about it and we were like, imagine if like I worked like that all the time. Like I'd be like,
you're like, wait, why haven't I done this in the past? I spent so many months when I could have just done it in a week.
Yeah. It's like all these kids and everything we have, like what? No, but like, yeah. So just seeing the productivity that came out of just really taking a lot of time and focusing. It's hard with like a family because, you know, kids take a lot of attention and I want to be there and be present. And we don't have family here, like in LA, all our families on the East Coast. So we don't have a lot of help. So it's like, I gotta be here. So like after that happened, we thought it was really cool how I got all of that done. So we've been, you know, thinking about ways I can have that time to like really focus and get stuff done. So it was like a really productive on that side too, as far as like family life and balancing time and like seeing what I should be doing as well, you know? Because all those things are important, you know, for a well-rounded life.
And I wanted to ask you, man. I mean, first of all, just congrats on the family, because I haven't talked to you in a while. But you know, I'm sure, like, obviously, having kids is one of those things where, of course, it changes your whole world, right? And everything flips upside down. But do you think the experience of becoming a dad and having all these new rhythms in your life and new priorities and all that, do you think it's affected your music in any way?
Yeah. I know it has, because I'm like, I find myself being more in tune with like certain like feelings and emotions that I always had, but I never really like acknowledged them or like explored them, versus like I've always kind of been in that, like, when it comes to music, I love, you know, just kind of like a little shithead kid who wants to like let out their aggression. And like, it's always been kind of like, not necessarily aggressive music, but like the idea of like release and just like a little bit like, I don't know how to explain it, but now I'm like, I find myself wanting to express like different emotions, like through my music. Like there's some of that on the album. 'Cause there's like certain things, like, I don't know, when I'm with like my kids, like in the moment, like there'll be like these beautiful moments that I want to like feel and be present. And I feel like I want to do that in music as well. It's like, sounds really stupid, but I don't know.
No. It doesn't sound stupid at all, man. I think it's like, that's a very good thing to do. And like, if you're able to accurately express an emotion or a feeling through your music, that's kind of the holy grail, right? I think it's hard to accomplish, but I don't think it's trying to do it doesn't sound stupid to me at all.
Yeah. And I think like, you know, you listen to music on the surface, it's like boom, 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 you know, whatever. But like there's stuff in there, and there's a lot of stuff that I didn't get finished that's like very different, not different, but, you know, still me, but it's like a bit, you know, exploring those emotions, and even through like lyrics and like stuff like that. Some of it on the album, you know,
the track you did with Kalina, I feel like touches on that a little bit.
Yeah. That was really fun. I love working with Kalina. We always do like, we were in the studio yesterday writing stuff for her. She's doing a night bass EP, and we were writing some stuff, and we just love, like, I don't know, get a beat going and then like come up with a concept for like lyrics, and then just writing like just like really conceptual lyrics with like a theme and like an emotion. And it's like, it's really, yeah, it's fun. And I don't think I would be able to do that just on a single, you know? So I think the album is great for that, because it's a more of a body of work. And then if people connect with, you know, one of the sort of album tracks or whatever, that's a win. But, you know, we've done a track on all of my albums, all the other two of my albums, me and Kalina, and they're all kind of that similar style where it's not necessarily a club record, but it's also not like a pop. It doesn't really fit in a pocket, but we just love doing it. Like, it's just what comes out when we get together. Right. Like her sort of pop sensibility and then my dance stuff, and it like mixes together, but not in like a, I don't know, contemporary way that other people do. So
yeah, well, that's what we were saying earlier, right? Is you can actually hear your relationship with each other, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is like a unique thing that kind of only you two can have.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, to go back to the question, like having kids definitely has affected my music, and not only that, like emotional kind of like sense, like being more sensitive and aware of that kind of stuff, but just wanting to do better, you know, like, because now you have these little people depending on you, and like it's like inspiring to like, you want to like just be better at everything. So like I'm really into like yeah, like I really want my music to sound better and, you know, reach more people and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's exciting. I feel like,
Yeah.
you know, refreshed.
Right. No, of
Good
course,
movement.
man. Yeah, that's I think the best outcome. I mean, it's cool that you even take that attitude into your music, because I think a lot of people when they have kids, it's like, oh, well, now I gotta be healthy, or like I gotta become a better person. But I like that you're taking it as far as like I have to make better music because of my kids. That's awesome.
Well, it's like my job, right? So it's like,
Sure.
if you worked, I don't know, in an office, you like want to get a promotion, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
for your family. So
I
like,
mean, I feel like you've gotten some promotions over the years. Like you're at the
yeah,
point, kind of what we were talking about earlier, where at the start, night bass felt like an outsider thing, and now it's a bit more of like the thing. Like, is it odd to you that you, as an artist, are at the point where, I mean, you're selling out big venues, doing these like, you know, big events, you're doing stages at festivals for night bass, like you know, you've kind of gone from outsider to insider in a way.
got promoted.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, man. You're management now.
Yeah, upper
I mean, but
yeah.
as an honest question, like, how does it feel to grow as an artist, to do bigger and bigger shit, but still, you know, want to maintain these values, this focus on a community or on progressing the music? So I think for a lot of people, when you get to those bigger levels, and I'm not talking about anyone specifically, but some artists stop progressing at a certain point, or they get comfortable where they're at. And I've never really felt that from you.
I mean, maybe that's just how I am. Like I get bored or I want to continue to, I don't know. It's just me. Like I just want to keep driving, but it's weird. Like just talking to you, it kind of had like a little epiphany of like, everything I do is just like kind of chasing a feeling that I once had when I was like younger. But you can't just do the same thing over and over. You kind of have to like recreate it for yourself, you know? And if people connect to that, that's cool. I hope so. But I think like I still feel like an outsider because there's a lot of circles in music where like I feel like I'm not totally accepted. Like I have success on a lot of levels, but like there's also people that don't let me into their circle. You know what I mean? Like there's like there's cool clubs and stuff, that kind of stuff, which is fine.
Always.
I'm cool with all those people, but I feel like still a little bit of an outsider in certain ways. But I'm definitely like lucky enough to have had like some success, and I want to keep going. And you know, there's a lot of artists who are like in the mainstream sense, nobody knows, but they sell out a zillion things. Like, you know what I mean? There's like super underground artists that on paper, you're like, they're not underground. They're fucking selling out like some venue 3 nights in a row. And like, you know, I couldn't name one song, but you know, it's just crazy. Like, so I think you can be an outsider and still be successful, you know? So I think in the world of outsiders, I'm an insider, but I'm not like if I go hang out with like sort of like mainstream music people, like I just don't fit in. Like I don't speak the language and I don't know what they're talking about half the time.
100%. I mean, it's funny if you look at like I've been on certain bills or certain festivals or that sort of thing. And like, you look at the lineup, like just the flyer or whatever, it's like everyone's name is the same size, the same color. It's like it's all presented like it's the same. But then you, as a person, you get there, you hang out with people, and you start to realize it's like, whoa, well, we're not all here for kind of the same reason, right? Like we're doing the same thing on the same stage, but like some of us think this means one thing and some of us think this means a different thing.
Dude, that's such a good point. That's such a good point. And you got to know those, like, I like knowing all those different people, but certain people, like, it's just like friendship or like just personalities in general. It's like someone's idea of what they should be as like an artist might not fit what you think you want to be. But I like to see other people's like version. And
100%. Yeah. It's nothing against, I certainly don't think that like I'm right all the time or that I have the answer all the time. It's like, I have no clue. All I know is how I see things. But then, you see other people and it's like, sometimes it's mind blowing. It's like so far off from my perception, you know?
Yeah. And there's a lot of cool people that like I interact with a lot, like who I think are awesome people, but like, you know, like I only sort of surround myself with the people that I really click with, like people that I love and who love me back, and that you know what I mean? Like you're compatible with like certain people, and like I do get along with everyone, but I like to surround myself with the people who just like kind of have the same vibe as me. And like I find that you feel better, you get a lot more done, and you are a lot more like focused on like the commonality that you have. You know what I mean? Like I work with like Chris Lorenzo a lot. Like we have a project that we're doing called Fly With Us. We work together. It's not like, oh, we got to go in the studio together. It's like so fun. It's so effortless. And I'm not saying it's easy to make good music, but like it's just easy to make songs together because we just like, it just bounces back and forth, and it's like very natural, and we're like best friends. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just easy versus like if I was just thrown in the studio with someone I didn't really know and we liked each other, but I don't know, there's no like rapport or anything. It's just different, you know?
Dude, of course. I mean, that's like what you were saying earlier, that there's still like some cool kids that won't let you in the cool kids club. That's a feeling I think anyone can relate to on some level. But it's I think the maturity growing as an artist is sort of realizing that like that you don't want to be in that club, because it's like that's their thing and you have your thing. And it's not that you can't hang out with them or have fun with them or learn from them, but it's, you know, if you just sort of focused on the insecurity of like, they don't let me in the club, then you finally get to the club and it's like, oh, this sucks. Like I should have been hanging out with my friends, you know?
And I think I've learned that over the years. You know, you think about like, we were in those happy hardcore days, and like the raves I went to, it was like house, techno, trance. And then there'd be a side room that was like drum and bass. And the drum and bass scene would always complain about like the side room with the shitty sound system. And like, they would always complain about not being like treated well. And I'm like, we're not even in the fucking party. Like we had to throw our own parties in the VFW hall or whatever, God, you know, like it's like, so I'm used to that, you know, and that's kind of where Outsiders came from. And that's like, I've kind of always been like that. Even with like, fast forward to like Trouble and Bass, like when I joined up with those guys, it was like, the cool thing was like indie dance and like EDM hadn't happened yet. It was like super trendy, like indie kids listen to dance music, but like we were doing like UK music, like dubstep and like original dubstep and like bassline and like UK funky and all this stuff. And it was just so outside the box, you know, but we loved it. And I love being with that crew, and they're still my friends to this day. And it's because we all clicked and we're into the same music as well. And
yeah, dude, I mean, there's lessons in there for sure. Lessons that I guess I wish I learned much earlier in my career, which is, you know, that if you're with a group of people and you're having fun and you're excited about what you're doing, it's kind of the only thing that matters, right? Because I remember when I was younger, and there was there were a bunch of cool kids clubs that I felt like, I want to be in that, but I can't get in, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, you look back with hindsight and it's like, none of that mattered. The only thing, like, it didn't matter because that's a silly thing to worry about. But also, the only time I was doing good work and making cool music was when I was hanging out with my friends, fucking around, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, man. And that's like, isn't that why you want a career in music, is to like have fun and enjoy it? You know, why? I don't know. It shouldn't feel like tedious or like you shouldn't feel uncomfortable. Like everything I do is just so intentional, and I encounter a lot of different people when I go play shows and stuff, and it's cool. But like, I love the very specific people that are in my sort of crew or family or circle or whatever.
How do you feel about the road these days? Because you've always been a road dog. I mean, and you'd get after it. You would hit it pretty hard, man, in terms of like dates and in terms of just like going hard, partying, all that.
Now I'm like, I don't know, like before pandemic, I was like touring a lot. Definitely stopped, the heavy drinking and all that. And then COVID hit, and then it was just chilling at home, and then became a dad, and that changed everything. And then coming out of COVID, it was like, what do you want to do? Like, how do you want to do this? And, we tried a few different things. I'm kind of on this, like, when I do a tour, making it like every other weekend kind of thing. So I have like a weekend at home, and I could be more selective, and I'm very lucky that I can do that and like shape it up that way. Sometimes it's like 3 weekends in a row or something like that. Yeah. Right now I'm like off for a month, which is awesome because the tour starts July, and I can like focus now on sort of promoting the album and stuff like that. And just being at home. And yeah, I think just in terms of like home life, we've figured out a way for it to work for me to be on the road. It's not easy, but like, I think it's different because I would always think like, oh man, it's going to be so hard to have kids and be like an artist, and like, because I have to travel, and on paper it sounds like, oh, you're never going to be around, but I'm actually always around because I work from home, you know what I mean? So yeah, I know dudes that like have day jobs, and they leave when the kid is getting up, and they come home when the kid is going to sleep, and they never see their kid except like on the weekends. And mine like the opposite. So it's like, in the end of the day, it's actually a good situation. I'm not going on the road for like weeks at a time or anything. I'm going to start trying to go out of the country a little bit, because I haven't left North America since pre-COVID. So
oh wow, okay.
I try to do some things now that like we're getting a groove at home. How do I handle touring? That's kind of where it's at, but it's always going to evolve, I think, because kids' needs change as they grow up as well.
No, of course. I guess, I mean, too, for you personally, do you still enjoy the road like you did?
Yeah, I do. So it's funny, when I was like 20 years old or something, I'm like, oh my God, if I'm still like trying to be a DJ when I'm 30, I'm going to kill myself, and I'm like in my 40s now, and I'm like, I literally feel like I'm just getting started. And the thing I've told myself now is like, as long as I enjoy doing it, I'm going to do it. I don't need to set like any limits of age or anything. And then the day that I'm just like, I don't want to be here, like, I don't want to do this, and that becomes like a common thing, then it's probably time to either stop or slow it down, But right now, I'm in love with it just as much as I always have been,
That's fucking great to hear, man. And yeah, there's no limits on any of this. I mean, it's funny because not that there haven't been many generations of DJs before us, but I feel like with how big dance music has gotten in our lifetimes, we don't kind of know what the upper limits are for this, There's people who just keep pushing it older and older, who are older than us already. And I don't know, man. Yeah, maybe you just do it forever. Who knows?
I think the reason why that thought was there, and it probably was there with a lot of DJs and music people, was, there's old bands and stuff, but when we started DJing, it was new. So like,
exactly,
the oldest DJs were like 30, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Or whatever. So like, now it's like, you got like Carl Cox and, that kind of stuff, where it's like, they're like, old, grown up people who are still doing it, and it looks cool, and they're like legends. And it's like, if that's how I end up, I'll be there, if it makes sense and it feels right, like, I'm going to do it. But I don't not want to do that, and I don't want to do that. I don't really know, for me, it's like, take it as it comes. Like, maybe something else will take its place. And, I don't know what that would be, but like, for now, I'm loving it, and I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. Yeah, I don't think you have to overthink it either. It's like, as long as it's still fun, like we said, is I listened back to the first podcast we did a little bit, and we talked a lot about, sort of your career path and your journey to get to where you're at this point. And so, for anyone listening, like, go back, there's a lot of awesome stories in there about how all this happened, but we didn't talk so much. Like you mentioned, you grew up in West Virginia, but we didn't talk so much about like you as a kid. So not that we have to go super deep into it, but I wanted to ask you, like, if we're watching the movie of your life and the opening scene is like you as a kid, the movie opens up, like, who is that kid? Like, what do we see that kid doing?
I was a pretty bad kid, but not like, I was like mischievous, I think about it a lot, I try to remember things from when I was a kid, and I feel like over time your memory gets kind of like skewed.
Worse and worse. Now, I was just talking to someone about this. We're finding out more and more how bad our memories are. Like they say that every time you remember something, you're just remembering the last time that you remembered it, And so it's like an old tape that just degrades over time.
Yeah. So it's funny because I have like so much footage of me as a kid. I don't know how far back you're talking, but like literally like middle school, like I watched all those tapes like when I was doing high 8, and like the whole thing was like so funny that I'm literally exactly the same. Like the way I talk, the stupid jokes, all the antics and stuff. It's like more like immature, like very kid stuff, but like I'm doing the same shit, like listening to the same music. Like we were always like when I was younger, I was like skating a lot. So we were always like out hanging out and like, or like just hanging out in like my bedroom or something with like a couple friends or whatever, listen to music. And it's just funny because I was like, this is so wild because I'm like the same person, like didn't really change that much. I think obviously you get wisdom and you mature but like the underlying like personality is still there. And I find that like really interesting because I don't know if that's normal or I don't know.
Yeah, well, in some ways, man, I think a lot of people lose touch with who they were as a kid and then eventually try to get back to it, Mm-hmm. And maybe that's some of what you were talking about of like, make it like watching the tapes and feeling the nostalgia and chasing those feelings that you had when you were that kid. But I don't know, man, to me, that's like one way or another, it seems like maybe you found a shortcut, because I think at the end of the day, like, we're all who we were when we were kids in some aspect,
I think like I've always been chasing that, like, and I just didn't know it, and like, I also was like one thing that I do know is I was like very late to like mature, like everything I know now about myself when I was a kid, like I didn't know then, like, so like, I was just like I had no path or direction. Like, I didn't think I would ever be doing this. And like, it took me many years to like, I see kids now, I say like someone who's like 20, like is so much more mature than me at that age. Like, we crossed paths back then. And I was like such a like idiot, like kid, like I still acted like a little kid, and like, it took me a long time to mature, and like, it's just kind of crazy. So I think I lived a long sort of like youth.
Yeah. Well,
probably for better or worse, but
right. Of course. And we're still sort of trying to cling to that, right? Like that's what's so fun about still being here. Like we were saying at the start of this conversation, like we're from those days till now, we're still doing, like we still get to play, it's like, we get to play for work. And that is such a crazy thought to me, and even though we can like mature and grow up and, be adults in other ways, it's like, we still go do the same silly shit we were excited about when we were a kid. And I don't know, man, there's something that to me makes me very grateful when I have the ability to have that perspective, you know?
Yeah. And I think like that's one thing that, because I recognize like how lost I was like as a kid about like, where am I going? What am I doing? Like, who am I kind of thing? Like, that's why I try to help a lot of like younger artists, whether they ask for it or not. You know, I always kind of like try to give my advice and like my experience and my perspective, because there's a lot of things I wish people told me that would have saved me like many, many years of not knowing things and just searching for answers. Like, you know, so.
Do you have any examples that spring to mind? Anything you wish somebody would have told you?
I don't know. There's like things always come up, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, when you're a kid and an adult tells you something that's good for you to know, but you don't give a shit. Like, yeah, I like to like, you know, I meet people who are like, want to hear that stuff, and I try to like share it with them. And I think like, I don't know, like an example, like,
well, even that, I think that is an example, is try to listen, because when you're right, that when you're young, somebody tells you something, it kind of just like brushes off you. But I think that's a great piece of advice, is if somebody tells you something, really listen to it. And even if it doesn't make sense or connect with you, don't forget about it. You know, like see if you can connect with something about it.
Yeah. And just like stuff you've gone through to get to, you know, where I am. And I think, yeah, I can't think of any like specific examples, but there's a lot of things that come up all the time that, you know, I always kind of impart my experience to other people who are kind of like early on. And the interesting thing is like all these people you kind of mentor or whatever, you don't know what they're like, what's going on inside, or like, are you really going to be a DJ 10 years from now? Or is this like a fleeting interest? And it's hard to recognize, you know, or is this person like gonna just like never talk to you again? You know what I mean? Like, cause when you're young, sometimes it's hard to identify who's good for you and who's bad for you and what you want to do. Like they might not know that, you know, DJing is not for me, or once this gets hard, I have to give up because I don't want to fucking deal with it. And just like, yeah, try to help people through that kind of stuff. But everyone's life is different. So my answers aren't always right. But
sure, of course. But, you know, it's the only way we learn anything is by sort of seeing what people did before, you know, and whether then maybe we can improve on the way people did it before. But, you know, you still got to have those examples, even if it's like someone looking at you and being like, oh, I don't want to do it that way. They still have to see what you did, you know, and I think that kind of goes back to what we started off talking about, is like the cool part, the aspiration is really just to be here participating, like to be part of it and to be part of that tradition. You were a kid, now you're a little older. There's kids coming up now. You can talk to them, participate with them. They'll be in your position eventually. You'll be in some other position, and the whole thing just keeps cycling. And I agree with what you said at the beginning, man. I think that's like the real success, is just being able to sort of participate through the whole thing.
And I want that, like the way that I came up, there's a lot of like bad things, bad aspects of it, but there's a lot of good aspects of it, of like having to stick things out and like fight your way through certain adversities and like, you know, along the way. And like, you know, it was different. Like it was much more common back in the day for people to like take advantage of you and rip you off and like step on you. And like, it makes you strong, you know, and like they call it paying dues. And I think that's something that's kind of gone, because now everything's like, there's like a structure and like people can like pay their way into certain things. But I think without going through all the hard stuff, it's like, you don't have that thick skin and like experience and knowledge to like fight through anything hard in your career. Just talking about music, you know, music.
Yeah. No, of course. I'm right there with you, man. I mean, it is funny because like maybe that's hard for people to relate to who are just getting into it now, of like, yeah, you could go play a big show. You could play a festival for thousands of people back in the day. And then at the end of the night, and you don't have there's no contract. Yeah. And the guy just like runs off with the money at the end of the night. Like, it was not an uncommon occurrence.
Yeah, it's like, how many records did I not get paid for? You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, label deals.
I signed some bad contract, like all kind of stuff that like there was no one there to like guide me. So like, but it happened to everyone. You know, like a lot of people that went through the same thing. So I feel like it was just part of like battling your way into it. You know, and that was one of my goals too with like running a label with like Nightbase, was to like make it good for the artist, because I always hated being in the dark and like ripped off and having to chase people. So like, I always wanted it to be like a good experience, and I hope we've done that. I think we have. Just those things you learn from, like all that hard stuff, like back in the day. Sorry, all these memories of just like feelings from back in the day, you know?
Dude, of course. Yeah. Yeah, there were rip-offs happening right and left, man.
Yeah, dude. People would like throw a party and then just like not do the party, just keep all the ticket money, you know, like that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah, crazy. Like, and that's one of those things, I guess, we didn't have social media and all that back then. So like, nobody really knew. It was like way easier to just run a scam like that, you know?
Yeah. Wild. Things
are
better.
I will say, I mean, maybe there is some resilience that needs to be learned a different way at this point. But overall, man, it's fucking great that you made a label that treats artists a little better, and that you can impart whatever wisdom you have to people coming up. And, you know, because ideally, no one should have to go through that shit, right?
Yeah, totally. I'm glad I did. It wasn't fun, but
I like that you're clinging to that. You're like, no, people should get fucked with a little bit.
I am where I am, you know, like.
No, of course.
No, I don't think people should go through it, but I think people think that it's not going to happen.
Yes, that's true.
Bad things are going to happen whether you like it or not. And like how you deal with it is what makes you come out the other side or not, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, this sounds like a dark thing to say, but I actually mean it exactly the opposite. Bad things are never going to stop happening. Bad things are going to happen the whole way through, you know?
Yeah.
And it's more about sort of changing your perspective on everything rather than, you know, feeling like it's a constant battle. It's like, it makes me think of another warrior from those days, like Jake Kill the Noise. You know, that's a thing he talks about all the time. His last album was Embrace the Chaos. You know, it's like, it's like that kind of thing. You just got to lean into it. It's like, it's going to be a mess the whole way through. And so all you can do is really just like, you know, make yourself the best you, be ready for it and enjoy, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I could talk to Jake for hours about pretty much anything. He's amazing.
He really is the best, man.
OG right there.
Yeah, incredible. He could, I mean, he could put out books. He could be a motivational speaker. That dude, man.
Yeah, man. I talked to Jake quite a bit. He's great.
Well, it's fucking great to talk to you too, man. I mean, is there anything else we should say about the album, about the tour? Anything else we want to get out there?
I think we covered the album like pretty well. Like, go listen to it.
Yeah, it's a great album, man. I really like it.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Hopefully people like it. Hopefully people can come out to the tour. July, August, September. It's gonna be fun. I'm bringing Kalina with me, so on all the dates. So she'll be playing right before me. So it'll be cool.
She's so good, man. I love her.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's about to be, I'm telling you, like 2 years from now, if you look at her, she's gonna be like huge, I think.
I think so
she's
too,
just
man.
putting in a lot of work right now, like a lot of work. So.
Oh, and she's just undeniable. Like, it's one of those where, and maybe this is the part of the maturity of like being around long enough where like the second I saw her is like, oh, why isn't she huge right now? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that thing. It's like, She's patient. She works hard and she has talent. So it's like a lot of people are like, make me famous now. But it's like she's currently and has been putting in the work. And I kind of see like, obviously you can't predict anything because you never know. Someone might be like, well, I don't want to do music anymore, like next week. But like the work she's putting in and the quality of her work is like amazing. So I can see some big things happening. And dude, that's like a lesson there too, right? It's like she's been doing it for a long time and this stuff doesn't happen overnight, you know?
Yeah. Well, and you know, everyone always wants the secret to success, which doesn't actually exist. But if there is any secret, it's you have to put in the work. There's no way around it. You can you can have a million other tricks, but if you don't put in the work, it's not going to happen.
I think also we live in a time where there's like people who give advice about like bust in the room and tell them you're the best one. And you're, you know, and it's like, that's cool. But like, if you have nothing to put behind that, then like, how long can that last? You know,
exactly, man.
Trying hard to be big without anything to support it. And longevity, you need to show, I feel like for a long career, a long career starts with a long career, right? Like there's a lot of people that are like this new artist. And it's like, but that person's been doing music for 10 years since they were like 12 years old or whatever. And it's like, they're not a new artist. They're new to you. And that's why they're big. They didn't just like suddenly pop up. And some people maybe, you know, occasionally, but I think everyone who's really successful put in the work, you know?
Of course. That's it, man. There's no way around it. I think it's an appealing, I even relate to it. It's an appealing idea that maybe there's a shortcut where you're like, this seems like a lot of work. Maybe I can figure out a way to get around it. You can't. There's no way around putting in the work.
You got to be conditioned, you know, work out your brain for dealing with a lot of this stuff.
It's a marathon, man. People got to train before they run the marathon, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That Willy Joy is DJing at, you know?
I mean, we're doing all right, man. We're still in the marathon, so that's something.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Well, dude, it's great to talk to you, man. I don't want to keep you all day, but fuck, dude, I hope it's not another 6 years before I talk to you.
Yeah. No, we shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's awesome talking to you, man. Like for sure.
Yeah, 100%, man. No, we don't talk all the time, but I do always think of you fondly, man. And you pop into my head now and then. Like I feel a closeness that I don't always reflect by actually talking to you.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I feel the same way, man. Like we don't talk a lot, but you're always there, I think.
Yeah, 100%, man. No, and that's it, man. We're in this weird thing, man. We're doing it, and it's nice to know you're there doing it too.
We're in the marathon together. You know?
Yeah, baby. Have fun on the road once you get back out there, and yeah, man, it's a great album. You should be proud of it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me back on. It's been awesome, man. Thank you.
All right, dude. I'll talk to you soon, man. I'll let you go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Take care, buddy.
All right, brother. Peace.